California in the 1950s felt like a place that had been invented specifically for the future. The air smelled like orange blossoms and ocean and fresh asphalt. New highways were going in everywhere. New neighborhoods were spreading across the hills and valleys like something alive. And in the middle of all of it, California was building places, restaurants, parks, drive-ins, coffee shops, whole worlds that nobody had ever built before. Most of them are gone now, not just closed, gone. The buildings torn down, the signs scrapped, the land sold to someone who built a parking structure or a condo tower or nothing at all. Here's what we're going to find out today. Which California restaurant fed you for free and still made money? What happened to the amusement park that opened before Disneyland and nearly beat it? Why did a coffee shop on Sunset Boulevard give its name to an entire style of American architecture? And which famous pharmacy on the Sunset Strip launched more Hollywood careers than any studio, while serving egg salad sandwiches? These are the places that shaped California's golden era. And here's why they disappeared. Start downtown Los Angeles, on South Broadway, sometime around 1952. You push open a heavy door and step into a forest, an actual forest, indoors. Towering redwood columns wrapped around the support beams, a 20-foot waterfall cascading down one wall into a stream that runs through the dining room, a stuffed bear fishing beside a pool, animatronic raccoons waving from the branches above your head. On the menu, a full hot meal for 35 cents. And if you genuinely could not afford 35 cents, you paid nothing at all. The sign on the wall said, "Pay what you wish. Dine free unless delighted." This was Clifton's cafeteria, specifically Clifton's Brookdale, named after the Santa Cruz forests that its founder Clifford Clinton loved as a child. Clinton opened his first cafeteria in 1931, during the worst of the Depression, and his rules were simple. Nobody got turned away for lack of money. Ever. By 1945, he had given away over 110,000 birthday cakes to customers who couldn't afford their own. He had also given away millions of free meals to anyone who came through the door hungry. The place attracted everyone, the penniless and the powerful, sitting at the same cafeteria tables, eating the same food from the same aluminum trays. Here is something almost nobody knows. Walt Disney visited Clifton's multiple times in the 1940s, while he was still working out what Disneyland would actually feel like. The themed interior, the waterfall, the immersive experience of stepping out of ordinary life and into a different world entirely. Disney saw all of it at Clifton's first. The writer Ray Bradbury ate there regularly and later said the place helped him imagine other planets. At its peak, Clifton's had 10 locations across Los Angeles. The Brookdale closed in 1960 and was demolished for a parking lot. The Broadway location survived, barely, through decades of downtown decline, until finally closing for renovation in the 2000s. It hasn't been a cafeteria since. The 20-foot waterfall, the redwood columns, the animatronic raccoon, all of it gone. What's left is a bar that uses the Clifton's name, in a city that mostly forgot why the name meant anything. A few miles west, on Sunset Boulevard, at the corner of Crescent Heights, there stood in 1949 a building that looked like it was about to take off. The roof tilted upward at a sharp angle, as if swung on a hinge, bright red cellular steel decking climbing toward the sky like a rocket ramp. A critic named Douglas Haskell wrote about it in a magazine and called the style Googie, after the name of the coffee shop inside. The name stuck, and an entire architectural movement was born from one small building. Googie's coffee shop became something far more significant than its name suggested. By the mid-1950s, it was the late-night gathering place for a very specific group. James Dean, who came in most nights after 11 with Dennis Hopper and a rotating cast of young Hollywood. Marilyn Monroe, Natalie Wood, Steve McQueen, Lee Marvin. The manager later said that on any given Friday night, half the names in the next morning's entertainment columns were sitting in Googie's booths. In 1957, comedian Lenny Bruce got into a fight inside the restaurant and was thrown through a plate glass window. Nobody was entirely surprised. The coffee was decent. The food was ordinary. The hours were around the clock. None of that was the point. Googie's was where the people who were making California's cultural moment went to be around each other at 2 in the morning, when the studios were closed and the bars were winding down and the night still had a few hours left in it. In 1988, the building was sold to a developer. Googie's was demolished, along with Schwab's pharmacy next door, to make way for a shopping complex. The architectural style it named is still studied in design schools. The building itself exists only in photographs. On the Santa Monica Pier and the land immediately around it, something remarkable happened in July of 1958. A group of investors, CBS, the Santa Anita Racetrack, and a collection of local businessmen opened a 28-acre oceanfront amusement park called Pacific Ocean Park. The abbreviation was POP, and the park was deliberately, ambitiously designed to compete with Disneyland, which had opened 3 years earlier in Anaheim. POP was built on a pier over the Pacific Ocean. Its rides were themed to the space age and the deep sea. There was a safari jungle ride where you drove a jeep through a jungle and shot at animatronic animals with electronic rifles. There was a diving bell ride that submerged you in a tank of water. There was a ride called the Sea Serpent roller coaster. There was a banana train that wound through a Polynesian jungle, crossed a rope bridge with the Pacific Ocean 20 feet below you, and went through a live simulated volcano. At its peak, Pacific Ocean Park drew millions of visitors a year. Here is what almost nobody remembers. POP was genuinely innovative. The designers used techniques that Disneyland had never tried. The setting, right on the ocean, rides extending over the open water, was something no theme park had done before, or has done since in California. It wasn't enough. Maintenance costs on structures built over salt water were brutal. By the mid-1960s, sections of the park were closing as fast as new ones could be repaired. Vandalism moved in. By 1967, POP shut its gates for the last time. Through the 1970s, fires destroyed what remained of the structures. Today, only the concrete pilings under the old pier location are still there, submerged at low tide, the last evidence that something extraordinary once stood over the water at Santa Monica. 1 year before Disneyland opened, in 1954, a different kind of California dream was being realized on the cliffs of Palos Verdes, south of Los Angeles. Marineland of the Pacific opened as the world's largest oceanarium, a place where you could watch performing dolphins and orcas against a backdrop of the Pacific Ocean that no tank in any city could ever replicate. Many people at the time considered it California's first real theme park. The killer whales had names, Orky and Corky, Bubbles, and thousands of children grew up visiting them year after year as if visiting old friends. Marineland ran for 33 years. It survived television, it survived Disneyland, it survived the rise of the freeway and the decline of the Palos Verdes Peninsula as a tourist destination. What it did not survive was a corporate acquisition. In 1987, the company that owned SeaWorld in San Diego purchased Marineland. Within weeks, they transferred the killer whales and the dolphins and most of the other animals to their San Diego facility. Then they closed Marineland permanently. The animals were gone before most regular visitors even knew the park had been sold. The structures were demolished over the following years. A luxury resort called Terranea now occupies the land, with the same ocean views that once drew families from across Southern California. If you walk the bluffs there today, you can still find fragments of old concrete, remnants of the viewing tunnels that once looked out into enormous tanks. The ocean is the same. Everything else is gone. Not every lost California place was a building. Some of them were entire systems. the kind that shape how a city moves and breathes. Through the first half of the 20th century, Southern California had one of the most extensive electric railway networks in the world. The Pacific Electric Railway, locally called the Red Cars, ran more than 1,000 miles of track connecting Los Angeles to the beach cities, to the San Fernando Valley, to Orange County, to San Bernardino. For millions of Californians, the Red Cars were simply how you got anywhere. You rode them to work, to the beach, to the baseball game, to downtown for shopping. A fare in the 1940s cost a dime. Here is something nobody talks about. Los Angeles was, for several decades, one of the best connected urban transit systems in America. The idea that Los Angeles was always a car city, always sprawling and freeway dependent, is a myth built on top of a deliberate destruction. Through the late 1940s and into the 1950s, the red car lines were bought up and shut down one by one. Buses replaced the trains. The tracks were paved over. By 1961, the last red car line closed. What replaced it was more cars, more freeways, more asphalt, the shape of Los Angeles that everyone now takes for granted as if it was always inevitable. It wasn't. It was a choice that someone made, and the red cars paid the price. On Sunset Boulevard, at a particular corner that has been photographed and written about more than almost any other in Hollywood, there stood from 1932 to 1988 a place called Schwab's Pharmacy. On the outside, it was a drugstore. Inside, it had a soda fountain counter, the long kind, with revolving stools and a glass case full of candy, where you could get a phosphate or an egg salad sandwich or a cup of coffee for almost nothing. Here is what made Schwab's different from every other drugstore in America. Everyone came there. Not occasionally, constantly. Cary Grant had a standing order. Judy Garland came in after late shows. Marlene Dietrich was a regular. Charlie Chaplin. Howard Hughes. F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote part of a screenplay sitting at the counter. The story goes, and it has been repeated so many times it has become California mythology, that Lana Turner was discovered at Schwab's soda fountain in 1937 by a movie producer who spotted her and offered her a screen test. The real story is more complicated. Turner was actually discovered at a different location entirely, but the fact that the legend attached itself to Schwab's tells you everything about what the place meant. It was the corner where anything could happen, where the distance between a regular life and a Hollywood life seemed shorter than anywhere else in the city. By the 1980s, the neighborhood had changed, the studio system had changed, and the kind of casual celebrity that Schwab's depended on, people simply passing time in public, available to be seen, had mostly moved behind gates and publicists. Schwab's closed in 1983. The building was demolished in 1988, along with Googie's next door, to build a shopping complex that itself has since been redeveloped. Nothing remains. And on summer evenings across the San Fernando Valley and the South Bay and the flatlands around Los Angeles, families did something that sounds almost impossibly simple now. They drove to a field, parked their car facing a giant screen, and watched a movie under the open sky. The Studio Drive-In in Culver City opened in 1948, its Art Deco tower visible for miles against the Los Angeles sky, positioned just outside the gates of the MGM studio lots. On premiere nights, actual movie stars drove their convertibles into the lot to watch their own films, alongside the regular ticket buyers, mingling in the snack bar line, signing autographs in the dark between features. The Sepulveda Drive-In in the San Fernando Valley was where a generation of Valley kids had their first dates, their first tastes of independence, parked in a line of cars with the radio crackling and the screen enormous above them and the whole summer spread out ahead. At the peak of drive-in culture in California, there were hundreds of them. They were the democratic entertainment of the post-war era, a place where you could bring children in their pajamas, or bring a date, or bring a car full of friends, and nobody required anything of you except the price of admission. At the Sepulveda, the snack bar served chili dogs that people talked about for years after the place was gone. Television pulled families indoors. The VCR pulled them to their living rooms. The land under the drive-ins, acres and acres of flat, easily developed Southern California real estate, became more valuable than any movie screen. The studio drive-in closed. The Sepulveda closed in 1985 and became a swap meet, and then eventually nothing at all. What had been a landmark, visible and familiar to everyone who grew up in that valley, was simply absorbed into the ordinary landscape of a city that keeps moving forward and rarely looks back. Here is the bigger thing underneath all of it. California in the 1950s believed, genuinely and without much doubt, that the future was going to be wonderful. Every building with its tilted roof and its space-age angles said so. Every drive-in said so. Every cafeteria that fed you for free because the owner believed that's how human beings should treat each other said so. The places on this list weren't just restaurants and parks and pharmacies. They were a particular idea about what American life could be, generous and open and built for everyone, with a little bit of magic available to anyone who walked through the door. Most of that idea is gone now. The land was too valuable, the maintenance too expensive, the world too impatient to let old things keep standing. What's left are the memories of the people who were there, and the photographs, and the concrete pilings under the water at Santa Monica that nobody can see anymore. Next time you're in Southern California, driving through Culver City, or walking along the Santa Monica shore, or passing through downtown Los Angeles, look at the parking lots and the condos and the shopping complexes. One of them is built on top of something that mattered once, and now you know what it was. Memory Lane, America, one story at a time.